Good morning and welcome to the Dropzone Commander special. Saturday morning TV at its best. In this episode, you could win, and you could win big time. You could win one of each of the 5 new Dropzone Commander starter sets for Shaltari, PHR, both now in plastic, watch till you see, UCM, Scourge, and Justin has
the Resistance.
The brand new Resistance in a resin set.
Oh, these are beautiful.
We'll also be chucking in a rule book and a copy of the brand new expansion book for Dropzone Commander Reconquest Phase 1. So, what are we waiting for? If you want to get the ultimate guide to Dropzone Commander, this is the show for you. Good morning and welcome to the Dropzone Commander Weekender Special. We're joined by Dave from Hawk Wargames.
Hi.
Dave's always good to have you in the studio.
Good to be here.
We have a bumper episode lined up where we're going to be looking at the new plastic starter sets. We're going to be looking at the new Resistance faction, and we're also going to be looking at Reconquest, the new expansion for Dropzone Commander that ties everything together. So, Dave, how's things going at Hawk?
Busy to the point of oblivion almost for tiredness. You know, I'm probably not looking my best right now, but it's been a very, very, very busy couple of months for us.
You look great, mate. No, you have Gen Con coming up.
We do.
You pretty much will be catching a flight very shortly after you leave here. So
yeah,
it's
a couple of days to finish a few display items off for the show, but everything else is all done.
Well, in this episode, what we're hoping to do is you've got tons to show off. You know, this month is such a bumper release. Do you want to go over basically what's happening this month?
Oh yeah, it's a huge month for us. It's probably the biggest month for us since the very beginning, really. We've got so much coming out, a lot of things that people already know about, the Resistance, we've been previewing those, but also we now have a full range of plastics for all the original core races, which now obviously includes the Shaltari and the PHR.
Yeah.
Because the UCM and the Scourge have been in plastic for almost a year now. We launched our 2-player starter set for Gen Con last year. And this year we now have a full range. They're all new and available separately now. But we also have the expansion and the Resistance coming out all at once.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Well, it's not all going to come out on the same day. You know, it's coming out over the next couple of months. But we're announcing them all now. I mean, it's been the kind of culmination of a lot of work. From the whole team. We've all been working ridiculous hours for very many months on this, and it's nice to finally be able to get out and speak about them.
Yeah.
You know, after such a long time.
Now, people will be able to see all this at Gen Con. So for viewers that are heading to Gen Con, whereabouts can they find you, and what can they expect to see from you guys at Gen Con?
Well, at Gen Con, you'll be able to see all of these. These will all be available for pre-release as well.
Yeah.
So you can pick up any of the new plastic single boxes and the Resistance as well. The new book will be there as well. We'll have all the Resistance models, all the painted ones on show.
Yeah.
So you can see all of those. There'll be our new blister packs for all the other factions, the original ones, because on top of all of this, we're also updating all our blister pack packaging now for full colour pictures.
Yeah.
With pop-out stat cards for everything.
Nice.
So that's a big change for us as well. I mean, that's coming on stream at the same time as all of this lot. So it's busy, and there's a hell of a lot to talk about and a lot of new things to see. We've got a new display piece that we're bringing.
Yeah.
But you'll have to come along to see that. It's not the big spaceship. In the end, the big spaceship's still not quite finished.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to ship it all the way to America and back, it not being finished.
Yeah.
So it'll be there next year. There'll be other chances to see that. It's not going anywhere. We're not going to blow it up or anything.
Yeah.
But there will be something else to see. Me and Simon will be there, and we'll have some of our American guys there helping us out as well. A much bigger stand than we had last year. So in general, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to Gen Con. It'll be fun, manic, as it always is.
Yeah.
You know, but it's going to be great, and it's nice to have so many new things to show off there, really.
Fantastic. Well, look, we're going to get stuck in and start showing you what's in the boxes. In this episode, we're going to be looking at each of the factions. We're going to be talking about the factions. So if you're new to Dropzone Commander, this is going to be your best kind of way to get into the game and understand the factions of the game and, and try and work out which faction is for you. So we'll be right back after this short break. So to kick off, we're going to have a look at the UCM starter box, okay? Now UCM, Dave, they're kind of like at the hub of the whole Dropzone Commander story.
Yeah, the story is generally told from their perspective. They're standard humans, pretty much. They're the most numerous human faction.
Yeah.
And they're the ones really taking the initiative in the storyline. It all revolves around their invasion of the planets that were lost to them by the Scourge, the gribbly alien bad guys.
Yeah, could you really call it an invasion whenever it's actually coming to take home back?
Yeah, it's Reconquest. That's the Reconquest, which is to take back it's Earth as well. So the Cradle Worlds, which are all of humanity's best planets, and Earth were basically taken overnight practically by the Scourge, an alien invader that basically turned up and just wiped out.
Yeah.
So for anybody interested in playing the UCM, well, first off, let's show off the new box. So there's new designs, new arts. Like this is brand new. Although the sprue's in it, anybody that's got a 2-player starter set, you've already got these.
Yeah.
But this is a new box. It's a new design.
Yeah, it's a new. All our new box art has got. It's actually the same imagery from before, but it's been remastered with a darker background. It looks more modern, more contemporary, and they all match up nicer and look better together on a shelf. Yeah. Well, there's also new artwork on the back.
So if we bring him up to here, yeah, who's this?
This is one of the UCM characters. We've got a whole range of special characters in the new book, which we can get onto later. But there's obviously the contents is different. The new starter boxes don't have the command cards in anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
We found they confuse new players.
Yeah.
And actually they don't really work unless you've got a command unit, and you don't get a command unit in the starter boxes. So the new ones are a much better price than the old ones were.
Yeah.
So
how much is this then?
It's £35.
£35. And
£35 or $55.
And that equates to what? About 700 points? So
yeah, about 600 to 700, depending on what upgrades you take. And there are certain things you can change a little bit.
And what is the tournament army point-wise then in Dropzone Commander?
Tournament army is about 1,500.
Yeah.
That's what we run for official tournaments. We find that works best.
Yeah.
You can go up to 2,000. It doesn't. The thing about Dropzone is the core stuff. The cheaper units are the ones you get in the starter set. So you've got quite a lot of models. Doesn't take up a huge amount of your points. But as soon as you start adding things like commanders, one command blister plus a commander that you just pay points for a character, you're very quickly close to 1,000 already. Once you've done that, and then you start adding heavy tanks, and they're weighing in at kind of 60 points each.
Yeah,
very quickly.
Then you start to get your air support and stuff in.
Yeah, and fighters aren't cheap either. And then very quickly, you've got 1,500 points without sort of adding 3 times that many miniatures to your army, if that makes sense.
Well, let's see what's in the box then. So in the box, let's crack it open. These are our sprues, and we have some
instructions and cheat sheet.
So we have the army reference sheet.
Yeah, these will be familiar to anyone who's had the 2-player starter set.
Yeah.
They're the same as the one in there. They're all the same now. They're all standardized.
Yeah.
This is a quick reference for the starter set. The starter sets are actually all balanced to play games against each other.
Yeah.
If you want to have a go of Dropzone, you can literally just open up starter sets, put them on the table, use these, play games. They'll be very well balanced, and they'll play very well.
So you're not having to worry about pointing up your first force.
No, and they also yield a good length game, especially if you're new to the game.
Yeah.
It'll give you a good hour and a half game with the starter set.
We also have the full instruction sheet to show you how it all goes together.
Yeah, very nice 3D instructions as well.
And then, Justin, it's if you want to take us through the sprues. So,
kicking off, we have your little infantry bases. So, nice, simple, clean. It's a base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We then have I think 3 of the same sprue, yeah?
Yeah, 3 of the same sprue for the UCM.
So
it's a big tool, this one.
Yep. So we start here. We have the wings for one of the condors.
Yep.
We have top hull of the tank. We have all your infantry.
Yep.
We have track sections. We then have the 2 weapon types. It's saber and rapier, if I remember correctly.
Yep, that's the one.
So the rapier is your anti-air, and the saber is your anti-tank.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you then have your bear APC up top. I think that's top of the hull and the sides.
Yep.
Then have bottom of the hull, back
door.
ramp. Its little pop gun is here. Then have the clamps for the dropship, VTOL engines, carry arms, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they all go. You can configure it with 2 or 3 depending on whether it's carrying bears. It carries 2 bears or 3 tanks.
Yeah. And then there's a very, very tiny little gun.
It's a little
here.
chin gun.
Yeah, a little chin turret.
I mean, they're normally pop guns.
Yeah.
And little machine guns often don't fire in Drop Zone because they often don't have anything to fire against because infantry in the open die really quick.
Yeah.
But every now and again they can be crucial. And I played a game in the US recently when my little pop gun on my little light dropship won me the game on the last turn with the last dice. Literally, the last dice rolled. It was intense, and it was the best game I've ever played.
Yeah.
It was a good one. But they do sometimes matter, so don't write them off.
Yeah.
So anybody that likes the look of the UCM, you know, they like that.
It's a very modular, angular style.
Yeah, it's a very militaristic,
very efficient sci-fi military. That's the feel of the UCM. Basically, they were invaded and they lost all the core planets about 160 years before the background begins.
Yeah.
And after 160 years in isolation, basically all the refugees fled to the frontier planets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That the humans had discovered for themselves because the cradle worlds were actually introduced to them by the Shaltari, which we'll get into later. But they did find some of their own planets too. They weren't as good as the cradle worlds. They were just kind of quite harsh places to live, but generally quite rich in resources. And
so good mineral deposits and things like that.
that kind of thing. And they fled to there, and the Scourge didn't follow because the way that faster than light travel works in this universe is you've got the fold space nodes, and you have to have a node, which is a physical thing, at the location that you want to jump to before you can jump there.
Yeah.
And it has to be one of your nodes. It can't just be anyone's node.
Yeah, so you have to have the access codes.
Yeah, you have to have the access codes, and then you can jump there. So basically, the refugees ran away and then closed down, reconfigured all their nodes so they couldn't be followed.
Yeah.
Which did strand a lot of people on the cradle worlds and Earth because they couldn't jump to the colonies because colonies were then just inaccessible.
Yeah.
But it did stop the Scourge from chasing them. So 160 years later, you imagine you've just been invaded, you've lost everything, and you've got this terrible alien threat out there.
Yeah.
So the whole society is totally focused on military production.
It's time to gear up, arm up,
time
and
to
go back
gear
to
up,
kick some
arm up
ass.
and kick some ass, which is exactly what they do. The core rulebook literally opens on the day of the invasion when they very first launch.
Yeah.
And then subsequent books will advance the storyline as the new one does.
And this is something I'm looking forward to talking about later, in that you actually have an actual advancing storyline with dates.
Yeah.
So people will know, like, for example, the new Reconquest book, you tell me is something like, is exactly 251 days.
Yeah, 251 days after D-Day on Eden Prime, which is the first cradle world they invaded.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of different campaign stuff in there.
In terms of play style, how generally do the UCM play, and what you know, if somebody wants to kind of get a feel for what kind of play style they'll have with this army, how would you describe it?
Well, the UCM are as close to all-rounders as the game has.
Yeah.
But they do have certain strengths. They have very good tanks. They have good aircraft. They have very efficient units in terms of points. Usually they have things that just do one thing. You know, this is a tank, it kills other tanks, and that's it. But you pay less points for that. So if you efficiently use your units where you should do, you generally get a few more models on the table with UCM than you get with the other core factions, which is a good thing. They're generally a good all-rounder faction. Their infantry are very cheap, generally in points, which is helpful. You get more of them, which is nice. You know, that if you like tanks, the UCM are the army for you, because they have the most sci-fi, most advanced tanks in the game. You know, crew of one who lies prone inside the tank with a turret on an articulated arm that comes up.
Yeah.
It's a very advanced technology and very lightweight because everything the UCM has is designed to be dropped from orbit in an offensive invasion capacity.
Yeah, so it's maximising your resource for the minimum amount of risk.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's the whole focus of the UCM is very, and obviously you are playing the faction around which the background is written, which is nice if you want to be in the core of things. The UCM are a great faction to play.
Yeah.
One other thing is here that we have a little bag which has the flight stands in it. So if we open that up, there's another little plastic component I just want to draw attention to, and that's the canopies.
Oh, the canopy. You know what? Canopies are missing.
Oh, they are.
These. I'm going to be honest about this. These boxes were packed yesterday for this interview by not on our normal stream production line.
Right.
We have the name of the person that did it.
We will hunt you down.
We'll put up a picture of the canopy. But there are little plastic canopies.
There are little clear canopies. There's actually a pilot inside the Condor, which is the thing we added for the plastic ones.
Yeah.
Because the original resin ones are a solid resin canopy all the way across.
Yeah, but
these are
the amount of detail you guys go into on this, Dave, is absolutely mental. Because I'm looking up the side of this Condor, and you have all the fine detail just up the inner edges there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do a lot of detailing, and on the undersides of units as well. That's one of the things we do. We don't leave undersides plain unless they would be plain.
Yeah.
Like if you've ever seen the underneath of an M1 tank, it's basically just a flat plane.
Yeah.
So ours are like that. But if it's a car or something, then you can see all the transmission and everything.
Yeah, you're crazy
underneath.
enough to put the full suspension units into it.
Yeah. Which it's part of my kind of pedantic nature with detail. I think if you can add it, then you should add it.
Yeah.
Well, look, let's move this out of the way because I want to talk about our next faction, which are the baddies. This is the Scourge.
Yes.
Um,
Here they are.
So here we have the Scourge. Dave, what can you tell us about them as a race?
The Scourge, they're highly aggressive. They're a neuroparasite, is what the Scourge biology is.
Yeah.
So they invade any carbon-based host, take them over, and basically bend them to their will. They're some people sort of say they're a bit like the Goa'uld from Stargate, but they're not, because there's lots and lots and lots of them.
Yeah.
And two, what they do to the host is quite different. They extend the host's lifespan indefinitely, but they don't live forever. The Scourge will live for a couple of 100 years-ish and then die. But when the Scourge starts to get old, the original host's consciousness has been there the whole time.
Being forced to watch all the
by that
atrocities.
point, it's gone completely crazy. So by the time the Scourge starts to die, they get gribbly. And they lose all the pigment in their skin. They kind of go very pale. They sweat a lot. They get
the body
very
temp
thirsty.
runs high.
Yeah, they get really kind of antsy, and they get to the point where they drink the blood of the fallen and all sorts of things. Very not good. Also, in terms of how they recapture, the way they work is they basically take over a place. I mean, if you're going to invade a planet, why demolish a city and then have to build another one?
Yeah.
What they do is they take it, absorb all the inhabitants, and use the city.
Yeah.
Because it's all pre-done for them.
Yeah.
Kind of like a caddisfly kind of thing. They move in and just take over. They use some of the original industry. They add their own structures too. You know, you'll see a lot of the artwork in the new books got a lot of Scourge buildings in there and what they do to a human city. The longer it goes on, the more they add.
Yeah.
But equally, they do also breed hosts. So the standard warriors in the starter set are human hosts. They were originally humans.
Yeah.
Originally the human inhabitants of the Cradle Worlds.
We'll put this here. So that would be your little infantry bases down here.
But they also have other things like razor worms, which are sort of big, 50-foot long, multi-limbed killing machines that they breed especially just to attack buildings.
Yeah.
That's
and are they controlled by the Scourge parasite as well? Do they have the
same parasite inside? Basically, if they come across a race that's particularly virulent or nasty for one reason or another, they might breed them especially as hosts.
Yeah.
But it's not an ideal process, and the new book goes into a bit more detail about how they've been trying to do it with humans, but a lot of humans are dying off. Which means they're constantly looking for new planets to take over because their biological imperative is to expand and breed and produce.
Yeah.
They can live outside a host. If they don't take a host when they're really young, they have to live as they are, which is a kind of gelatinous jellyfish-like gooey creature.
Yeah.
But they don't enjoy that. They'd much rather have a host. All the vehicles have got the original pure Scourge inside them, basically living in a big vat of black tar-like nutrient.
Right, so the crew for any vehicle is not a human hybrid controlled by a Scourge, it is just one of the Scourge?
Yeah, it's just one of the Scourge, like literally in a floating tank inside the vehicle, wired in permanently for life. They get wired in, and that's it. They're moulded to the vehicle forever. So, and again, that's not an ideal process. A lot of the Scourge will die in the implantations, so that's not ideal for them either.
Yeah.
So they've always got this drive to obtain new hosts, which fuels their aggressive nature and which is why they attack planets so much and why they're such an offensive orientated.
And what's this piece of artwork then?
Who's this?
This is the Cave Breaker. This is one of the Scourge special characters. Now the Scourge are the only ones that don't have names, because the Scourge have never spoken to humans before. They can speak, they can communicate amongst themselves, but they don't.
Basically, the nickname the soldiers would give them.
And this guy was. It also changes the background. Well, not changes the background, but advances the background in terms of individual Scourge, because they do have their own personality. They're not like ants. They do have a brain, and certain ones can rise above their station. Ones that are kind of predestined to be leaders are implanted into big command vehicles like the Desolator, which is their big, huge command vehicle. And they're the sort of a high breed that's destined to be leaders. But certain ordinary Scourge can rise above it. Right. And he's one of them. He's this character that's just appeared and been awesome. They've actually modified an Annihilator, which is a big artillery unit, to carry him. So instead of being in the nutrient goo, it actually has a canopy. So he actually gets in and pilots it, which is unusual and a new development for the Scourge. But it obviously brings characterization to them as a race. They've got two characters in the book.
They're not automatons, basically. There is
they're not like must die for the race. They do have a kind of collective behaviour. And they don't mind casualties too much if it's good for the Scourge.
Does that mean that there's the possibility, perhaps in the future, that even a vehicle could develop a kind of like a personality?
Well, the vehicles all do have personalities, because they've got a living being permanently melded to them, which means all their vehicles behave in an organic kind of fashion, because they are basically a mechanical body, almost.
You can totally see the resistance referring to one particular nasty drop or nasty attack ship, like an Attila the Hun type character.
It's one that they keep seeing. And,
so if it took a specific piece of battle damage, there comes Scar again.
That's what I'm thinking.
I was thinking a little bit about that with Battlestar, because that was one Cylons never really had any sort of individuality apart from the skin jobs that they put in. But with Scar, they had this one thing that was a character and yet a vehicle at the same time, which is kind of,
I remember the story arc.
Is part of my thinking for that. I mean,
it's quite a terrifying thing, the idea of a vehicle being a particularly evil personality in and of itself. It's okay. So here we have
infantry bases,
the same infantry bases again. So they're just pretty standard. We have our little bag of flight stands.
One little piece in here that is probably worth talking about is a little widget.
The Hawk widget.
If you don't know about these already, these are very handy. So this little piece here goes underneath your model. You glue that end on. But then this part just pops into the flight stand, and then you can literally turn the model upside down, give it a shake, and it won't drop off. And then when you're done with the game, you can just pop it off, put the model away, so you don't have broken flying bases all the time.
You don't have to pack the stuff away on the flying base.
It's a little thing we've had from the beginning, but it's people like those. And all our flying bases come with them as standard. They've always got them in.
It's the cool little touches.
Once again, we have the quick reference sheet, so everything that you need to play the Scourge is on that. So all the points, all the profile stats, and then on the back you have quick reference to the various charts.
This has all the basic charts you're going to want to look at, and a specific reference for anything that's referred to as a special rule on the back. So you don't really need to look at the rulebook when you're looking at stats from these. You can just have that as a crib sheet when you're learning how to play.
We also have the assembly instructions. Once again, all in nice 3D. And there's the other side. So it's very easy to put this stuff together. It's all high quality plastic, Dave, and works perfectly with plastic cements and things as well.
It's the best stuff we could get. It holds detail.
3 identical sprues again this time.
For the Scourge.
So we have the main lower hulls of the tanks.
Now, what do you call these? What are the
these
tank?
are the Reaper and the Hunter. The Hunter is your standard anti-tank tank, and the Reaper is the anti-air one.
That would be, if I flip this over,
the Hunter.
This turret.
There. Plasma cannons, very nasty.
And this would be a plasma caster, is it?
A arc caster.
Yeah,
it's an unusual AA weapon. It's basically like a crackling beam of energy that latches onto isolated stuff. So it's weird in that it hits aircraft on a 2, but ground targets on a 6, because it's going to hit like a phone box or a tree instead of what you're actually aiming at. So the Scourge AA is really very narrow, and it just kills aircraft, even more so than the UCM.
Yeah.
And it's very fast and aggressive, but lacks the range.
Yep. You've then got your troop transports,
Invader, APC.
which again, even on the bottom, has its little gravity impellers of some sort. Got your infantry up the side here. You've then got the sides for your dropship.
That's the Marauder, their medium dropship.
Main hull for it. These go inside here to actually allow you to put either 2 or 3 into the dropship.
Yeah, they rack up, like the people have described them as flying CD racks, which is a good description.
Yes, it is a bit like that.
The grav tanks literally slot in, and then the tanks can deploy out from
It's
them.
also worth mentioning at this stage, for anybody that's maybe new to Dropzone Commander, is everything is created
fit
perfectly
on a
to
dropship.
scale. So your dropships will actually carry your vehicles. Everything's exactly to scale, one thing to another.
Yeah, everything's all true scale.
Yeah.
I use a lot of real world military unit references for how big things are, so it's all very much in parity with what you'd expect, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, you can fit 15 guys inside the bare APC. You know, I measured it out, like one guy plus kit, plus rifle, plus everything else. Get 15 men in there.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bit of a squeeze, but then real world APCs, if you've ever been inside one, is
Yeah,
a real
they are.
kind of like not a pleasant place to be, but you can fit 15 guys in there.
Yeah. Last couple of components we have are 2 little engine pods down the bottom and the little pop gun for your transport.
That's the other thing about the Scourge. It's not really a plop gun. Plasma hose is energy 9, which is pretty powerful. You can go up to all the way up to energy 13.
Yeah.
Anything beyond 10 is quite exceptional.
Yeah.
9 is good enough to kill any armoured unit in the game. On a 6 you need for armour 10. But it's great against buildings. It's great against enemy APCs. Hunt them down. These Scourge dropships are very offensive like that. They've got the highest energy weapons, but they're very short range, only a 6-inch range. It's literally just spewing out a beam
It's
of
basically,
plasma.
I'm going to hide behind this building this turn, you're around there. If you're still there next turn, I'm popping out, having a little shot.
Yeah, they're also fast. I mean, your dropships, general ordinary dropships are quite cheap in points, and especially with the Scourge, because your ground units are so fast. Once you're on the ground, your dropships won't be used that much to redeploy.
Yeah.
The PHR in particular are very slow on the ground, so their dropships are needed constantly to pick up their ground units, move them, drop them in the same turn. The Scourge don't do as much of that, but their dropships are much more offensive. Once you've dropped off, you just go and attack.
Yeah.
You just throw them in the enemy's face, and they might die. As I said, the
But
Scourge
if they
don't
take
mind.
something along with them, worth it.
Yeah, the Scourge don't mind casualties so much.
Yeah.
And they don't.
So in terms of a play style then, for any player that's maybe considering the Scourge, fast and aggressive.
Yeah, fast and aggressive all the way with the Scourge. They have generally the most powerful weapons in the game. Short range, short finite range as well, which is an important distinction with Dropzone. Every weapon has 2 ranges: range full, range countered. Range full is against anything like a building or an ordinary civilian vehicle that doesn't have any countermeasures. For something like a railgun, that's going to be infinite.
Yeah.
Or rockets might be 48 inches, pretty much the whole board. And then range countered comes right down against something like a tank with countermeasures that can destroy the munition before it hits.
Yeah, so basically a little interception system.
Yeah, and the faster the projectile, the longer that range is going to be. So a railgun is longer than a cannon, and a rocket is very short ranged.
Yeah.
But Scourge weapons have got the 2 ranges are often the same. It's a plasma weapon will just get through any countermeasures.
Yeah.
But it's got a very short, finite range, and then it just burns out.
So overrun your enemy.
Glass shotguns kind of thing is the Scourge.
So if you're like him and you like to just bull in, this is the faction for you.
Yeah, they've got a lot of fun units like Prowlers, the little skittery
those
terrors.
little things.
I love Prowlers. I hate playing against them, but you know the Scourge have the fastest light dropships. You know they can get those right to the back, right in the middle of your heavy tank formation, and then drop these little critters right in the middle, and they'll crawl on the back of enemy tanks and inject them with plasma and melt all the crew, which is nasty.
They also
Very
have
Scourge.
fairly scary kind of trip bases and razor worms as well.
Yeah, razor worms, the new destroyers as well.
Yeah.
The destroyers are big, chunky Hulk smash kind of characters with 2 big guns, and they can literally bash their way into any building, even if there isn't a door. They can make a door. They can shoot up the building before they go in, because buildings and structures are a big part of Dropzone. You can destroy them. You can You could damage them. You know, bits of the building can fall and kill men inside even before the building's dropped. That's a big part of the game.
Yeah, but then you have a lot of the time objectives and stuff within buildings.
Yeah, which is where your infantry come in.
Yep.
Your infantry have to get in there and get objectives from inside buildings. They can fight from buildings. That's where they're at their most effective. If they're in the open, they're dead really, really fast.
Yeah.
Because infantry don't have any countermeasures generally, and they just get mashed from any range, from anywhere.
Yeah.
So they spend nearly all their time inside buildings.
Yeah, and they move at a realistic speed when they're on foot.
Yeah, very slow. You're not getting anywhere on foot in the time scale that a game takes place in. It's all very fast, so you need APCs to move around and things
so you
like
have
that.
to go from dropship to APC to building.
Yeah. The miniatures are still very important, though, because you can allocate walls to shoot from, so you generally put the miniatures on the roof, and then you can move them around. I'm going to go on this wall and shoot from here, and you take casualties off them, and you know they're still an integral part of the game, even though they spend most of their time inside buildings.
They become almost like a scalpel. That the whole game feels to me like probably the best set of rules for kind of like a modern feeling combat, because it's all based on movement of your resources, redeployment of your resources, and taking troops like a scalpel and getting them in the right place at the right time to do the job.
Yeah,
and then actual combat within the buildings feels just absolutely brutal.
Yeah, it can be very brutal.
Get loads of people die. That's the only time you get a bucket of dice moment in Dropzone. Normally you're only rolling 1s, 2s, 3s, D6. It's all D6 based.
Yeah.
But a CQB, close quarter battle, you might be rolling 20 or 30 dice, which is if you've got a lot of men
very
in there.
satisfying, I've got to say.
All of a sudden it feels like that room to room clearance. Break out the bayonets.
Yeah, I mean a lot of people die very quickly in that kind of combat, especially when you've got sort of 40 guys versus 40 guys that are just going to massacre.
Well, that's the Scourge. We're going to take a very quick break. After the break, we're going to do the first of our big reveals, and that's the new PHR and Shaltari plastic starter set. So stick with us, guys. We'll be right back after this. So welcome back. In this one, we're going to have a look at my new army
and my current army,
and that's the Post-Human Republic. I've been playing UCM. I love UCM. It feels like a I don't know, like a rock and a sock, and I just love wielding it around. But in a couple of games, I've had my ass handed to me by these guys here. I love the models. I love what they can do. And finally, we have a plastic starter set. So if we can show off the box, and Dave, if you can talk us through what we're looking at here. So
PHR. Shall I talk about the units or about the race first?
Talk about the race.
The PHR, they're the descendants of when the Cradle Worlds on Earth got invaded. Basically, some humans were advised by an AI to run away and leave.
A mysterious warning came in.
A mysterious warning came in exactly 1 year before the Scourge invaded to say basically something terrible is going to happen and you need to leave Earth and you need to leave all of your core planets.
Yeah.
At that point, you get the whole "the end is nigh" thing. And there's a kind of mini civil war. It's not really a civil war, it's more unrest on a massive scale.
Yeah.
And then as this time gets closer and closer, these followers of this white
tensions
sphere
just work up and twist together.
This thing is an AI called the White Sphere, which is basically a tennis ball sized lump, which takes about 4 people to lift. It's a weird thing that's beyond our understanding of physics and everything. It's a very bizarre object. But it landed on Earth, and the humans on Earth at the time took it back to a research centre, and it literally hacked every computer on the whole planet within minutes. In theory, although nobody really knows at this point, most people think that they still basically paid a group of mercenaries to liberate itself from this facility, and it disappeared.
Yeah.
And you don't see it again. And then it issues this warning, having hacked all the computers on the planet. So the warning's issued simultaneously across every computer on Earth, all the Cradle Worlds, everything, all across mankind's domain. No, it's an enormously powerful AI that's well beyond anything. And the Shaltari are a massively advanced alien race, but they're nothing on this thing. This thing is beyond a whole different level. But basically, some humans chose to run rather than stay and fight the Scourge.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know that the Scourge were coming. This is one message from one alien unknown entity that you don't even know about. So some people are like, well, this is rubbish. I'm just going to stay. I'll be fine. Some chose to run. They took a lot of military resources with them, and the actual military at the time tried to stop them because they were taking a lot of ships and jumping away to these mysterious coordinates that the sphere provided. So you get one giant fleet action where a lot of people die. It's very bloody. It decimates the human fleet because the abandonists, the guys who ran away, they fired first to cover the retreat of the bulk of their forces.
As they're booting it,
as they're booting
shooting it.
Some of them stay behind to fight, and they fire first because the EAA, Earth Administration Authority, which is the pre-war government, they chose not to fire first, and they got decimated. And then literally the day after that, the Scourge turn up, and their fleet's knackered. So they suffer even worse than they would have done. They'd have lost anyway.
Yes.
Make no bones about that. They'd have lost anyway.
Yeah, so it just made it a cleaner roll in.
It just made it worse for them. But then, so when the UCM launched their Reconquest, a couple of days before they launched, these mysterious ambassadors turn up, which are the descendants of the abandonists who ran away, which is the PHR, Post-Human Republic. In the intervening years, the AI has basically gifted them with a lot of technology. They're far more advanced than the UCM. They're still humans. They still have certain human limitations. Most of their troops are all cyborgs, and they can switch off pain, all those kind of things. They can lose limbs and just fight on cheerfully without, but they'll still bleed out and die later. But they're not robots. They're still flesh and blood mostly. They use a lot of nanomachine technology and all those kind of things. There's very few of them. At the moment, even in the new book, their motives are still somewhat shadowy. They're actually, even though they're human, there's less known about them than there is about the Shaltari as a race.
Because they literally only came back on the scene a couple of days before the invasion.
They keep themselves very secret. I mean, they don't, in terms of how they behave to the other races, they've been having a kind of diplomatic, real battle with the Shaltari, because the two of them are both quite slippery as races. The UCM hate them. Obviously, they regard them as traitors and turncoats, and will fight them with every excuse. The PHR don't hate the UCM, but they have their own motives, and that often involves killing UCM.
But with the PHR, it always feels like they're kind of looking at the UCM as if it's parents looking at children going, don't know what they're doing. They advised the UCM not to undertake the Reconquest at all, and basically said, you're not ready, don't. And the UCM go, we've been preparing for this for years, get stuffed. And did it anyway. And since then, the PHR have been fighting the UCM in various places. The new book goes into a lot more detail about what they've been doing since the invasion.
Let's flip it over, and we can look at what's in the box, or what you're likely to get. Quite a bit in this starter set, isn't there? So 3 drop ships, 4 walkers, 2 tanks, and 4 stands of infantry.
The PHR, they're different from their kind of the UCM, but more so in that they're very slow, slowest faction in the game in general. But some of their new units are faster, so they do have flankers. But the bulk of your force is going to be very, very plodding on the ground. But they've got excellent firepower, long range. Generally, the PHR are the elite race. They have generally the best stuff. The best railguns, they have the best dropships, they have the best, but they do suffer in terms of points cost and speed. Which is where
they also get passive countermeasures, which I like.
Now, how does a passive countermeasure work then?
A passive countermeasure is a saving throw. Effectively, very few units have it. Only a few PHR units have passive countermeasures, and they're not passive countermeasures in the strictest sense. They're just the result of the unit being unbelievably tough. And it can sometimes take a hit, take damage, and fight on.
Well, before I open it up, we also have a great piece of artwork here.
You've got Yocasta Kane there, one of the new PHR characters. She's a kind of fast strike commander.
Now, I'm excited about this because we haven't seen the... Hello. Very nice. Okay, so if you guys want to take us through that, before we start show off the sprues, let me very quickly show off the PHR Army quick reference sheet.
Exactly the same format as the other ones, very familiar. All go work alongside. Also, with the PHR, which is different from the other races, you do actually get a couple of bonus models that aren't on the fast play sheet.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time you get free sprues with free APCs, but the army only uses 2 of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with the Scourge and the UCM, you get an extra APC bonus, and the Shaltari as well.
Yeah.
But the PHR, you don't get that. But what you do get is weapon options. So with the walkers, you get the weapon arms for the Menship Walker, which is the specialised anti-infantry one with flamethrowers and twin miniguns.
Yeah.
It's a specialist unit, and it isn't on the fast play sheet because you wouldn't put it in a starter army because it doesn't balance against the others. You use the other 2 walkers.
Yeah.
It also looks like you're getting an extra turret for your tanks
Yeah,
here
you
as well.
also get the Juno. Again, most PHR stuff has generally got... So the other APCs are generally unarmed. They've got a pop gun or nothing.
Yeah.
And this PHR ones actually have reasonably decent weapons. A cannon on the A1 and a twin minigun on the A2.
Yeah.
The A2 costs less points.
And the beauty of this stuff, Dave, is all this stuff pops on and off. You don't have to glue this stuff in place.
You just swap the turrets over.
Yeah. So it is a true option. It's not you must build it that way in order for it to be an option. It is an actual true option.
Yeah, you can magnetise them on very easily, and they'll sit on by themselves. Especially with paint, they'll be fairly tight. There's all very tight tolerances with the plastic, so you won't find wobbly turrets that kind of thing.
Well, if you take us through this sprue then, Dave, and just start to point out what we've got here.
So this is the PHR main sprue. You get 2 of these. You've got your Immortals. There are your PHR standard infantry. Much tougher than everybody else, but you get less of them.
Yeah.
Like most things PHR. You've got the Walker hull, which is now in 3 pieces because plastic moulding is different from resin. So to keep the same shape, we did the hull in 3 parts. You got the central section there, and then you've got left and right sides. Goes together very easily. Then for the legs, you've got the main leg sections. You've got the toes, the feet. We wanted to maintain all the detail in those, so we had them as a separate component. They just sit on underneath, very easy to assemble. Yeah. Then you've got the hips, which are there for the 2 walkers on the sprue. And then you've got the various weapon options. You've got the rail repeater, rail gun. You've got the twin miniguns there. You've got the flamethrower in the corner down here. And then you've got the scanners for the standard Ares, the standard anti-tank one, and the anti-air Phobos one, which is slightly bigger dish.
So of the walkers, there's 3 walker variants that you could build. You can build the Ares, which is a anti-tank, the Phobos,
anti-air,
which is anti-air, and what's the final one called?
And that's the Menship.
The Menship, and it's more geared towards
killing men, killing infantry. That's all it does. Yeah. But flamethrowers are amazing because you can target men inside buildings directly, even if they're not on the walls without penalty. Which is you can cook them out. Which is becoming especially more relevant in our newer tournament packs and some of the newer scenarios that use tougher buildings. Yeah. Because the original meta is more about blowing up buildings. Yes. We're introducing more hardened structures you can't destroy. So things like flamethrowers are becoming more relevant.
Yeah, so suddenly I don't need to blow up that big concrete bunker you're standing in. Burn,
I just need to get near it.
You just burn them. Yeah. You know, the Scourge still have the best flame unit in the game, the Tormentor. Heavy tank is amazing at flaming people, but it costs more points than the Menship. Yeah. No, that's the PHR flame unit.
And these do these guys have the kind of the jetpacks that they can bounce? Or?
Yeah, that's the Apollo, and the Apollo, which is one of the strike walkers, which is in the new book. Okay. They're much faster. They're basically the fastest thing the PHR has really in terms of walkers, but they're not going to form the core of your army, and they're not as tough as everything else you've got. Yeah. Then they're not good to make a whole army of the things, but having a small flanking force is very useful.
Yeah. You know, just something your opponent has to say, well, that's coming up toward me. I can't really ignore that. I have to deal with that. So I'm diverting forces to it.
Yeah, they can jump over buildings and things like that. You know, the APCs, the gun on the APC is becoming more relevant with the release of the Resistance because the Resistance have a lot of smaller, weaker vehicles that a medium strength cannon like this can pick off quite efficiently. Yeah. So the PHR, they do the one thing about the PHR is you've got to be careful how you deploy them. They're not the best beginner friendly army sometimes, depending on how your play style is. If you like castling, if you like blowing stuff up from range, if you like being tough, then the PHR are the army for you, definitely. But you do have to be careful about deployment because they're so slow. If you put them in the wrong place, then you're going to get owned.
Suddenly having to run back and get into the mindset of a new player going, okay, I need to quickly redeploy. Crap, I've already ran my flyer off elsewhere.
Yeah, you generally need to keep the Neptune, the dropship, quite close to your walkers if you're thinking of redeploying, but you can't shoot the things you're moving when you redeploy either, so you lose a turn of shooting by doing it.
Yeah.
But having said that, things like the Phobos, the anti-air one, has a 24-inch range, which for AA is amazing.
Yeah.
There's only one other unit in the game that has that, in AA, which is one of the new resistance ones.
Yeah.
But this thing, they sit at the back, and their strength is in defence because you can reaction fire with AA.
Yeah.
And the massive amount of range means that anything flying anywhere near this thing is going to get picked off. And it's very powerful as well. It's a great anti-air unit, but you only get 2 of them, whereas you get 3 with the other races. But it stands up by itself quite happily. Phobos is probably the best standard anti-air in the game.
Yeah.
Is the opinion at the moment. I'm not sure about that, but that's what people think. You know, it's great. Every PHR army should have 2 or 4 of those in minimum.
Yeah.
Phobos is excellent unit. Everything, it's worth saying actually that everything in these starter sets are all core stuff that every army is generally going to need or use.
This is the stuff that an army's typically built around.
Yeah,
so it's...
it's not, you don't get kind of units that are sort of, you get those, but you don't put those in your army. You take them out as soon as you can and replace them with these.
Everything that's in there is backbone.
Yeah, it's all backbone stuff. You know, the 1 or 2 things you might choose to swap out later for equivalents.
Yeah.
But they're all core, good, solid units that you're probably going to want in your army later on when you expand.
And again, this new box is same price again, £35, $55.
Yep, for the all of these new plastic ones. That we've also got 2 different sprues for the PHR. The Neptune sprue.
Wow.
You get 3 of these. Hull is now 1 piece.
Yeah.
Then you've got a spine that goes underneath the hull. These have the 2 mount points. If you like magnetising, the PHR are the best army to magnetise.
Yeah.
All the walkers share this universal mount point, and the APCs and everything they have basically that goes on a dropship has exactly the same mount point.
All but one thing in my PHR army is magnetised.
It's all completely interchangeable. It's very popular to magnetise PHR. It works really well for them.
Any particular hint on what size magnet to use, or?
I usually use little sort of 1.5, 2 mil ones. Make them, about 0.5 mil thick, something like that. They're all very light because it's all plastic and resin. Generally, you don't have any big heavy metal models, so you don't need anything too heavy duty. That works quite nicely. A little sort of Dremel kind of multi-tool, glue them in. It's very straightforward to magnetise. There's a lot of tutorials.
What have we got here then?
That's the rear engine.
So we just to show the underside.
We're at camera shot.
There's full tailpipe detail inside all of these engines. You can see that in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of detail on the engines, and the same for the small rear engine as well. That pivots inside there. You have to glue it in, but you glue it in at any angle, vertical.
Yeah.
The rear one essentially propels and lifts, and the front 2 they work together as a sort of VTOL thing.
They sort of balance and turn.
Yeah. Dropships in Dropzone kind of behave like helicopters do, so they're not super fast. There are super fast flyers, fast movers, fighters that go zip from one end of the board to the other. Dropships loiter. They stay on the board there. Generally reasonably fast. PHR are the slowest, but also the toughest. You're seeing a theme here with the PHR.
Yeah.
They do have some really awesome big units as well, like the new Hades, which is a monster.
Oh, that thing.
The Hades is real area denial kind of unit. Slap it down.
That's that big scorpion-looking thing.
This is my piece of table, and you're going to have to work very hard to kill this thing off.
Yeah, with the nanos.
I have faced the Hades a couple of times, and it is a terrifying prospect, let me tell you.
Yeah, the Hades is a monster.
If you want to kill that thing, you have to focus pretty much everything and your entire mind on killing it. You will kill it, but you do have to focus almost everything on it. So.
But that leaves everything else free to do its own thing.
Exactly, which in Dropzone, there's always a trade-off all the time. You can never do everything. The strongest list is a good mixed list with a bit of everything in.
Yeah.
Which is why all this stuff is core, because you need your standard AA, you need your tanks.
Yeah.
The Ares has its advantages over the heavier walkers, because it's got a better targeting system, so it can negate modifiers to hit a little bit better, which makes it very good at picking off faster things like skimmers.
Yeah.
Whereas the bigger, chunkier, not crude, but more heavy-duty walkers are not as good at that. So there's reasons to take your standard ones as opposed to heavies. There's always a trade-off all the time. We try and balance every unit that we do, so there aren't any kind of junk units.
Well,
we try and avoid that.
That is our look at the PHR. Next up, we have another brand new kit. This one is the Shaltari.
Now, this is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, the Shaltari. These are highly capricious, highly advanced aliens. They have a tribal system, and each tribe will fight each other occasionally. They kind of believe in the strength of conflict.
Yeah.
Because they regard themselves as being the best there is, and they only really rate themselves as opponents.
Yeah.
And if you're like that, if you're not going to stagnate, you've got to fight each other every now and again.
Yeah.
So each tribe has their own agenda, partly. The race does have a global grand plan, of which tiny hints are in the new book.
The hints are starting to break through now.
What the Shaltari are actually about, what they're trying to achieve. You know, they're more advanced than the PHR. The White Sphere is more advanced than these guys, but the foot soldiers, the Shaltari have a whole nother level of tech on everybody else. They use gates instead of dropships, which are the Edens. The Edens are basically you teleport your forces around.
Yeah.
But that's amazingly powerful for certain reasons because you can, say, zip into one gate on one half of the board and zip out of another on the other end of the board instantly.
It's a completely different kind of play style. You know, it's
Yeah.
all about a spatial awareness. See, if you want a challenge and an army that will really challenge your spatial awareness and give you options for maneuvering and outmaneuvering your opponent, this is definitely the way to go.
If you're a tricksy player, then the Shaltari are definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
I like playing Shaltari because it's always a challenge and you've always got to think about so many things at once. Plus, you deny your opponent knowledge about what you're doing because in Dropzone, all the other armies, the dropship is attached to its parent unit.
Yes.
And it is for the rest of the game. You know, the opponent knows what's in that dropship. They know what's coming. With the Shaltari, anything can be coming out of any gate at any time.
Yeah, so it suddenly becomes zones of control.
Yeah, and the opponent's got to expect anything.
There's that element of surprise, isn't it? Yeah.
The downside, though, is that if you destroy a gate, it's gone and nothing's coming out.
Yeah.
Whereas with most dropships, blowing up the dropship doesn't automatically kill everything on board.
Yeah.
It can do if you get unlucky, but most of the time, things on board survive, and you've still got area control, whereas with the Shaltari, if you lose your dropship and you haven't dropped off, then you've got nothing in that area. So there are downsides. They generally, you pay quite a lot of points for things that are somewhat undergunned with the Shaltari compared to the other races. They pay their points for their mobility and for their flexibility rather than for their massive firepower. If you like massive firepower, the PHR are a better choice.
Yeah.
You know, the Shaltari aren't the fastest in a straight line either. The Scourge get them there.
Yeah.
But the ability to redeploy quickly is where the Shaltari win. Especially if you've got things like focal point missions, which are effectively taking hold of regions of the battlefield. Stuff that can't move. The Shaltari can do a lot of tricksy final turn redeploys, a lot of zip, deploy, and then you've just suddenly half your army is right on top of that focal point on the last turn.
Yeah.
So there are strengths and weaknesses to every army. These are the ones that the passive countermeasures really come into play with. The PHR have a few. The Shaltari, practically every unit in their army has passive countermeasures. Generally a 5-up save, and that's against any weapon at any range.
Yeah.
Except for the particle cannon, which is a Shaltari weapon, which ignores all countermeasures, which is the badass weapon. It's the only weapon in the game that does that.
Yeah.
You know, they have a few exceptions to rules. They have their own mechanics with gates that are their own special rules. They have a special rule section in the book just for them. They're the only race that have that.
Yeah.
You know, if you like that kind of play style, then the Shaltari are great for that. They're also a painter's army as well, I think. As
very
a
much
painter,
so.
I like the Shaltari. They support bright colour schemes very nicely. There's a ton of detail on there. You can really go to town if you want on detail. They respond very well to inks.
Yeah.
Like the Scourge, actually. The Scourge and the Shaltari are the two that like inks best. You can get a really effective looking army very quickly with inks. Techniques. I use that a lot.
Well, let's have a look what's in the box. So, there we are there.
You've got 3 Eden medium gates.
Yep.
And then you've got 3 Tomahawk grav tanks. And you've got 3 Kukri anti-air grav tanks, 2 Haven, their APC equivalents. They're effectively ground gates.
Yeah.
And then you've got Braves, which are the infantry. Only 3 per base, but they're hardcore. Shaltari themselves, this is the first time anyone's actually seen any artwork for Shaltari.
Right.
They're, as you can see, very tribal looking.
Yeah.
They're very short. Shaltari's only sort of 3 to 4 feet high, little guys. Very covered in spines. but they fight in these big war suits because physically they're quite frail.
Yeah.
You know, if you had to fight one, you destroy it.
So they're building every bit of tech they can to keep themselves alive.
They're also they're not immortal. They're not your kind of elfin race.
Yeah.
But they make themselves partly immortal through technology. They can effectively clone themselves and then transfer their consciousness into a new body when they get old.
So there's a lot of inbuilt experience.
And their commanders are generally, you know, they've been through many lifetimes by that point.
Yeah.
They've got an odd social dichotomy going on in that they have a massive belief in honour, and to fight is the only way of obtaining honour.
Yeah.
But equally, the older they get, the more terrified of death they become.
Yeah.
But then the older they are, the more they're expected to fight, and the more they want to fight because they get involved in the whole warrior code to the point where they can't imagine anything else.
Yeah.
So, you know, their commanders are sort of exceptionally brave individuals given how much they don't want to die.
Yeah.
They're still out there fighting, most of their big commanders. You know, they have a different mindset to humans.
Yeah.
Well, in the box, once again, you get the quick reference sheet with everything on it that you're going to need for your playing of the Shaltari. Once again, on the back, all your basic rules are there. Your nice little 3D how to put it together. Again, it's a fairly straightforward army to put together, this one. There's nothing too complex in there, Dave, you know, so people should be able to follow along with
the
that.
Shaltari, actually, they look very complex. Like, geometrically, they're probably the most complex looking army, but they're actually very easy to put together.
And there's lots of options for these fins and things to put them on at different angles. We also have our
usual infantry bases. A new sprue with 3 holes instead of 5 because they're they only have 3 men per base.
And your blag with flight bases and the Hawk widgets in there as well. Now, let's get to it. This time we have 3 identical sprues. Is there anything extra on this one, Dave?
You get an extra APC with the Shaltari. It's always, the spare one is useful for experimenting with paint schemes. You can use it as an objective.
Yeah.
You know, you can create a little rec for it for various things. So the Shaltari set's more like the UCM and the Scourge set, and then you get what's in there plus 1 spare APC. You've got a lot of detail on these. These have pretty much the same detail as the resin ones, which is a lot for the Shaltari. The Shaltari have a lot of surface detail. You can see on these, all the little crop circle patterns are all on there. They're sort of jewelry-like Shaltari in terms of how they look. I mean, they do work with dark colour schemes as well, if you'd prefer. But I like them bright. I think they look really kind of vibrant and impactful when they're bright. There's a lot of example colour schemes in the book that you can play around with. And say the spare APC is a nice way of just messing about with that and seeing what you like before you paint the rest of your army. Now, this is all hard plastic, so the fins, you know, if you drop one, they'll just bounce. They won't, you know, they'll break if you really mean it, but they're good and solid, you know.
Although I love all the little gems that you see in the centre of the gates, because that in itself is an interesting way for painters to say, what colour gem will I do it to mark my units and stuff out? Yeah,
because you can differentiate different squads, although with the Shaltari, they do have the bonus that the gates aren't attached to anything at all, which is nice. You have a gate pool and you just activate whichever ones you want to during the game.
So what components go with what then, Dave? So these vehicles here are your kind of grav tanks,
Yeah, they're your Tomahawk and the Kukri hulls. Then you've got the Tomahawk Gauss cannon there, and you've got the Kukri ion cannon down there. That's the anti-air. You get more shots, but it's less powerful than the other ones. But that's fine. It's good in a lot of cases, especially if you're shooting against fast stuff, because more dice is always good, because fast things generally don't have much armour, but have to hit modifiers, and with more dice, you're always more likely to score kills there. Though they can also redeploy and shoot pretty quickly too, like everything Shaltari. Then you've got the men. 3 poses for each base. Then you've got the APC is broken down into more components than the original resin one. Because again, the thing we've done with the plastics is maintain all the geometry of the originals rather than redesign. So, you know, a plastic one is going to look basically identical to a resin one on the table. So the APC is made up of two kind of arm hull segments. Nose, tail. Then you've got a little gemstone protrusion, which is down there. And then you've got the grav fins front and rear, which go on there. get very easy to put together. It all slots in. Just a few more components than the resin one has.
Yeah.
The Eden is exactly the same as the resin ones. Very familiar. 2 rear fins, 4 front fins. They just pop into preset mounts. They just go in nice and positively. It's very easy to put together, the Shaltari, which is a bonus.
It's an absolutely beautiful looking kit. I'm so pleased with how that's turned out. The tiny, minute details, washes and inks, as you say, Dave, are just going to pop.
Yeah, it just pops. Really, I generally, my red ones in the rulebook, they start out bright yellow. And then they get 3 coats of red wash on top, and that just brings them all out.
Yeah, it is a stunning, stunning kit. Well, we're going to take a very quick break. After the break, we're going to be looking at new kids on the block, the Resistance. These are the guys that were left behind. You can imagine that they would be pretty pissed about that. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.